Hello folks and welcome to Linux for Seniors. This is my new YouTube channel. My previous one had a little over 400 videos. More importantly, this Linux for Seniors, well, Linux is for everyone, but more importantly, it's generated toward seniors or anyone that wants to learn in a simpler format. And I'll even show you tips and tricks along the ways on all of my videos. None of my videos are going to be under 2 minutes, just to forewarn you. That's why I say subscribe. That way you can start watching this, hit stop, come back tomorrow, watch where you left off, or the next day or following week if you like. And I also have a growing library of all kinds of materials. Today I'm going to give you Linux Mint Xfce desktop. The Xfce desktop environment is more forgiving on older hardware. Linux Mint has the Cinnamon desktop, and it's a little bit more taxing on your hardware. But the Xfce desktop environment has a lot to offer. So again, I'm going to make this fairly simple, and it will be lengthy, but I'm going to give you a full tour and overview and tips along the way. Welcome to Linux for Seniors. So this box here, a lot of people are frightened of. Don't be. I'm going to try to make you comfortable to understand a little bit about terminal commands. But you don't have to use terminal for anything if you don't want to with Linux Mint. But don't shy away from this box. It has a wonderful bunch of commands. So what is this thing called Neofetch? It's just system information. That's the Linux Mint logo done with a bunch of little characters. So this is Linux Mint 21.1, their latest version of the Xfce desktop. Linux Mint also has Cinnamon and Mate and also LMDE, which is the Linux Mint Debian edition. All right. You can see the hardware there. I'm really not going to talk about that, but I have some extra hard drives, USB sticks, and that stuff. Before I close this, can I just punch up clear and just give you something to be comfortable with using terminal for a second, just as an icebreaker? I'm going to put in the word cal. It's a calendar, and you're laughing. I got one down here. Yes, you do. And you can install other programs for different calendar functions. However, this one can do something special. You can have fun with your friends and family. So let's say you have a friend born in January of, I don't know, I'm just making up a year, 62. Your friend born January 1962, and I have shown this in my previous videos. So if you are watching this again, just bear with me. January of 1962, and your friend was born on, let's say, the 21st. He or she was born on a Sunday. That's the calendar from 1962. So if I use the upper arrow key on my keyboard, I repeat the same command. I'm going to change this up a little bit, and I'm going to put the number 2. This will be for February of a different year. So let's take something more modern. Maybe you have a friend or a family member born in February of 2001. And your family member was born on the 14th. He or she was born on the 14th. Wednesday. So you can have all kinds of fun with your friends and family. Another one more, just one more. So whether I put the number 7 or whether I put JUL for July, I'm going to put 1776. So 4th of July, 1776 is Independence Day in the United States. What day of the week did that July 4th fall on? Yeah, it's a little trivia. Just having fun, folks. Well, you can go look that up on the internet. However, your terminal box can do this in 1 second. It was a Thursday. So have some fun with that. I'm going to type out exit. So, as I get going, I will just show a couple of little tips and tricks along the way. So we have the calendar thing here. We have the volume thing here with the microphone and regular volume. I got this lightning bolt thing because I have some wireless mice and keyboards. My wireless network sitting here. My reminder, Bluetooth. And this icon just represents the simple screen recorder, which needs to be there the whole time during this video. File manager. Okay, I have something turned off, which I'm going to turn off because I left it there on by mistake. But basically, this is your home folder, whatever your username is, and that's how it opens. I also have some additional devices. Additional devices, well, for one, the regular file system, but there's other internal hard drives. I could also have external hard drives or USB sticks, which I have 2 of them mounted currently. So your personal folders are in here. There's also hidden folder, and there's I have 1 mouse pointer that I'm going to show you a little bit later on that I installed by using a special folder in here, which you can create in 1 second. Well, maybe 2. And as long as you have the files, you can come back and put a bunch of those in there for testing purposes for yourself. So I'll get to that when I get to settings. So that's the file manager. Oh, and maybe I didn't make mention of this. This is Thunar, the native file manager for the Xfce desktop. If you've seen any of my other videos for Xfce desktops, pretty much all the settings work the same. A standard web browser. So if you want a different web browser, I'll talk about that. And then I'll talk about my YouTube site for a second. As my library grows, you can use the search feature to look for keywords. Also, if you noticed, I just opened this up and I've already got X amount of views. And I have some links for you. If you're undecided on a Linux distribution, take a look at DistroWatch and take a look at the right-hand side of the screen. There are a bunch of Linux distributions there. What is gnome-look.org? Extra mouse pointers or themes. Then I have some extra links. These will change over time. My previous YouTube site, I had over 456 videos, but I have a couple for you in here. So let's move on. All right, so you can also go to your software manager and install additional web browsers. So I believe this is for your minimize your desktop in case you have something open, and this is your Mint icon. So the top bar is the name of your user. I'm currently using the live user as a demo, and you can also put in when your username gets placed in there, it'll have the name of your user, and if you can also put in a customized icon or photograph. You have your settings manager, your lock screen, and your logout screen. I am going to put a couple of more keys in there. Right click on this icon, hit properties. Again, I'm going to show you some tips along the way. I'm going to put in 2 of these, restart and shutdown keys. These are already built into your machine. All you got to do is activate them. Now I have a dedicated shutdown key and a restart key. You can also do the multifunction one. This is the standard one. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about what's in my favorites. Well, you have the web browser, and you can make anything a favorite. Once you get into the submenus, I'll show you that. So a web browser, email client or email. Pix is a organizer for your images. Rhythmbox is like for your music player. These are the default installation stuff. A calculator, it also has scientific and standard, normally comes up at basic mode, and you can resize these boxes. The windows, in other words. You have a simple text editor. What is a text editor? Well, it doesn't have a spell checker in most cases, so this is Xed. I use many text editors to write text files and also script files. Script files are used to do functions. You can usually add those in your startups, and it'll do like backups and stuff like that. So Software Manager, I'm going to stop here for a second and talk about Software Manager. Funny name for this, if you hit about, it's called Mint Install. It's, I believe this is almost identical to the one in the Cinnamon desktop, if not the same. But more importantly, everything is nice and point and click in here. It's very simple to install software. If you click the categories, for instance, if you see a green check mark, that means it's installed. So this will have a remove key and a launch. Versus something else, I'll just pick on anything, and it will have an install key. A good example maybe for like internet. You're wanting Chromium, for instance. Firefox is installed because it has a check mark. It's got a remove key. It's got a thumbnail. If the package is available for different Linux, if it's a Flatpak also available, you'll have a drop-down arrow. So FlatHub is another place the software comes from besides Linux Mint and Ubuntu. Usually the Flatpak software, which is self-contained, is a larger download You'll see the size of this thing is quite large compared to the regular system package of 244 megabytes, for instance. You notice that one is not installed. It has an install key. This one is installed and has a remove key. So the Chromium web browser is not installed, but I could. And all of your Linux Mint distributions are that simple. You just click them. Can you use Terminal to install software? Absolutely. You can also use another tool that's in here, Synaptic Package Manager. I'm going to show you that just to give you an idea how many pieces of software are available in here, how many packages, applications. So whether you're into graphics, maybe you're into GIMP. GIMP is like Photoshop. I use that to edit the thumbnails on my YouTube site and my previous site. Also available at FlatHub. By the way, when you see this thing in a different language, it's whatever language packs that you have loaded in your system. So the screenshots are sometimes in a language you don't understand maybe, but when you actually install the program, it'll be, let's say you have English language packs, it'll be in English. So don't let that confuse you. So there's lots of options, as you can see. I'm using the scroll wheel on my computer mouse. Lots of options in here. How many pieces of software are available in here? Well, I'm going to actually close this for a second and open up Synaptic Package Manager. I'm going to do a search for it, SY. So Synaptic Package Manager I can also use to install software. It's pretty simple actually. You can just type in what you're looking for. So I'm going to just use the game category, for instance, and find something. I'm not even sure what that is. But if I were to right click and mark it for installation, if it needs other software, it'll tell me that and I mark it. If it's a single piece, let's try that one out for size. That one needs a bunch. I'm just trying to find one that says single. How about this chess game? It still needs an additional one. But anyways, once you mark that, the apply key pops up and you can actually install it. That's not the reason I brought you in here. I brought you in here to look at this number down here. So these are the packages that are available for download. There's over 70,000 of them. So yes, you do have some options, as one would say. Could I use Software Manager or also Terminal? You certainly can. So this particular piece of software here, I actually downloaded using Terminal earlier. So to let you see what the commands look like, I'm going to punch up history. And this file is actually editable in your file manager. So first of all, I actually used the command to install Simple Screen Recorder to bring you this video. Let me break that command down for you, but I'm going to use this one instead because it has the same prefix. So VLC, what is that? That's this right here. Okay, that's a media player. But let me break down the command for you, not to get into the weeds, but I want you to understand that this is not as complex as a lot of people think it is. So sudo just means super user do. Gives me elevated privileges to do something. In this case, it's apt install. Anytime you do this, it's going to pull it from the same sources as your regular graphical software manager pulls information from. It's not just pulling it from a general out of the internet. This is coming directly from one of those package managers that you have tied into the system that you can use the graphical software manager also to use. So apt space install is the command for installing something. So basically sudo space apt space install is the command to install something. And in this case, VLC is the name of the application or program. It's that simple. So again, don't make terminal really that hard to understand. Do you remember those funny calendar commands I was producing? Well, you could actually copy this also and then do another paste. So I will do a paste, unsafe warning, but it's coming from inside of my system. You want to be really careful if you're posting commands off the internet in this box, by the way. Anyways, I just repeated that same command. So I could use the word exit to close this, or I can just use the close window. Your choice. So lots of little things with Software Manager and lots of software. You have a task manager sitting here. You can also resize these boxes. You can do it in multiple different ways. I'm going to click on this imaginary bar, make it bigger, click it again, make it smaller, resize it here, right click on this imaginary line, resize it here, do however you want to resize things. So that's just text. By the way, there's another command in here if you want to think about this. Some of you older folks maybe remember Topper. It's a movie. If you can think about that as a mnemonic, this is your process monitor. It's built into just about every Linux distribution. Okay, I'm not going to dwell any time on this stuff. So we have Software Manager, Task Manager. Let's move along to all. This is A through Z. It's got a scroll bar here. So if you're looking for A through Z application, you can do that. You can do searches. Activate Timeshift. Timeshift is a system restore utility. You'll be asked to do rsync or btrfs. You remember when I mentioned that text editor? I can also use rsync when I write script files to actually do copies of folders to other drives. But now I'm getting ahead of myself. Normally you would just hit next, pick the drive. In my case, I have lots of choices. I'm just going to leave this the way it is. And then these are my other backups that are in here currently. Or is it this one? Anyways, your settings in here you can also alter. If you have limited hard drive space, I don't recommend going below 2. But these backups do actually back up a lot of things. The other thing I wanted to make mention, don't delude yourself. It normally excludes your personal files. So do your backups elsewhere. Okay, System Restore or Timeshift is meant to restore your system, not your personal files. You can include those. However, you better have a big hard drive because it'll start building up, especially if you have a schedule of 5. This is default. And more importantly, this is a live version, so it's a restore only. But when you start building with the 5, after about a week or so, you'll see 5 of these things if you open up the utility on your installed version. So that's Timeshift. All right, so let's walk menu by menu here. So we could go with accessories. There's a lot of software, which I'm not going to talk about everything. This even looks at hard drives. So I have lots of hard drives, and you can just even look at your USB sticks and tell what kind of partitions there are partitions with. This is a little bit more advanced information for some folks. But more importantly, it tells me partitions on these drives. And document viewers, notes, screenshot applications. I recommend those if you're altering settings. Text editor again. Thunar, your file manager. Image writer, if you're downloading a ISO or bootable image of another Linux distribution, you can use this simple tool. Click on the ISO, click on the USB stick and hit write. It's that simple. And you can, the verify button is if you downloaded the verify file from the different distributions. There's also a simple stick formatter. You place a USB stick and you pick it. I have 2 choices. I'm going to do neither. But I could format either one of those 2 USB sticks with FAT32. FAT32 is compatible with your Linux, your Macs, and your Microsoft Windows. Xfce, you can just read the yellow boxes. Extension 4 is on the bottom. I'll just briefly mention that. That is for Linux. If you format a USB stick with extension 4 and stick that on a Microsoft machine, it will not see that partition at all. Stick with FAT32 if you want to do that, or NTFS. That's another Microsoft. Let me move on. Just a couple of little tips along the way. Warpinator is used for file sharing. I'm not really going to get into that in this video. And you have some graphics. You can, of course, install others using Terminal and or Software Manager, such as GIMP. GIMP is like Photoshop, or other paint programs. Internet, you have Firefox natively installed. You can install other web browsers, such as Chrome or Chromium. You know, you can go probably using a web browser. Not that I sanction downloading a lot of software off the internet, but you can certainly go to the Google official website and download Chrome. It'll give you the instructions for it. Now I'm going to talk about this web apps just for a second. This is a very versatile tool. On my previous YouTube channel, I discussed this pretty heavily and I gave you a lot of undocumented tips. This is designed by the actual Linux Mint team. I'm going to go to their website for a second. It's on GitHub, just to let you see that's Linux Mint. So some of the folks, if you're curious, from Linux Mint, this is Clem right here. He is Mr. Linux Mint as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, very knowledgeable man. But they created web apps. And more importantly, usually when you're looking for instructions, it's very limited. So if you were to go on their website and look at the README file, it's not that extensive. So that's why I was doing videos to explain to the masses a lot of shortcuts in here. Either way, I plan on doing something for web apps in the future. Stay tuned. Hit subscribe. Now I'm going to do one really fast for you. I'm going to create a web-based icon to Amazon. I'm not going to type in Amazon, but you can. I'm just going to use the letter A. You can type in addresses manually, or you can go on a web browser and copy and paste the address in here. www. Very important to do this. Amazon.com. Some websites, not all, will find an icon for you. You can also manually click different icons, including emojis if you like, from the system. You can also use this to try to find icons online. I'm just going to leave the default. The category just means where the initial storage of this icon is going to be. It's not that important. Firefox is the only web browser that I have, so I'm not going to click the down arrow key. And custom parameters is what I used to show, or will show in the future, for advanced users. Navigation bar I do want on. And then I'm going to hit OK. Now, there is a test button here, or a launch. I normally don't use that. I just use the add, the remove, and edit button. I'm going to launch this really quickly, just by double clicking on it. Alright, so Amazon is asking me for privacy information. That's fine. It normally doesn't do that. So let's appease them. Continue shopping. Goes directly to their website. You can do this for just about any website. It normally doesn't ask for that private information. I think it's because I'm using a USB stick, or whatever it is. But more importantly, what I want to do is close this, and I'll let you see that icon is now available in my menu if I do a search for it. I'm going to type in A. I could also right-click on this and add it to my favorites, desktop, or panel. I'm just going to click on it. So it goes directly to Amazon now that I appeased it. If you sign in, your web browser is going to remember your login information. These are great little tools for creating your own web-based icons. Anyone can do this. You don't need coding skills. So that's web apps in a nutshell. Let's move on. So multimedia, as I pointed out earlier, I installed these two. So by default, you get Rhythmbox, Pulse Audio, install media codecs. These are just used for different players in case it's missing some. Codec is a coder decoder, for videos and music, that kind of thing. Celluloid is a player, and this is a internet protocol TV station, Hypnotics. So you can find a channel and go have some fun in your country. I will just click on Argentina, and hopefully it'll pull up here in a second, because I'm not trying to spend a lot of time on this thing. I'm not going to let it load. I'm sorry. I'm going to continue going. So you can play with that at your leisure. Okay, so where did I leave off? I was in multimedia, and yes, I was discussing Hypnotics. Let's go to Office. LibreOffice Suite has a lot of options for you. It's like Microsoft Office, except the best price on this is free. And so some other Linux distributions may have a higher version of 7.4. However, 7.3 probably contains everything you need. So I'm going to write the word test with an extra T on it and hit space. The little squiggly just means that my word is possibly misspelled. So I say yes and say I want test. What kind of file formats can you save this in? Well, I'm going to do a save as and let you see this. I can save this in ODF, which is standard for this distribution, or I should say for LibreOffice, but I can also use docx, which is a Microsoft equivalent, or even the old one, Word 97 to 2003 .doc, and all the other formats that you can save. Again, the best price on LibreOffice is free. This is also available, I believe, for Microsoft and Macs. Let's move on. So Office has a lot to offer you. Spreadsheets, drawing program, math, and database. Settings you can get here or here. I'm going to open it in a different fashion. The boot repair is normally only on your bootable medium. It normally does not get installed on your installed copy. Just wanted to point that out. However, I'm going to stop here a second and say if you have something that happened to your Grand Unified Bootloader or GRUB, or it's not booting properly, you want to possibly, before you wipe your drive out and reinstall, is to use boot repair and follow the directions to fix your hard drive for boot problems. It's a great tool. I have used it a couple of times. All right, so we have lots of little toys. So system also contains other stuff that pertain to your system. Here's another shortcut, the software manager. And the software sources are coming from Linux Mint and Ubuntu for the most part for this distribution. Also, the Flatpak software is coming from flathub.org. You can also, if you're having a problem connecting, let's say to Mint, you can also take a look at their sister mirrors and pick them. This will show you the speed it's trying to connect to them. So all of these, there's Harvard School of Engineering, for instance. If you needed to pick that one, this is still scrolling. And then you can just hit apply and it'll ask you to update your package manager, APT, and say okay. And then it'll be temporary going to that location for downloading your updates or whatever. And then you can always click restore and it'll go directly back to these two. Now I'm going to move on. That's software sources. Okay. I already talked about Timeshift, and the importance of Timeshift again is to do a system restore. You can back up your personal files multiple ways using your file manager. All right, I'm going to open this up for a second and just briefly go through the settings. So you can put in your information about yourself, a mugshot, and you can literally click on either select from stock or browse through your own folders for your picture. The appearance, I do recommend that you take a screenshot anytime you do this. There's multiple ways of accessing the screenshot tool. If you have a function key and an insert key on your keyboard, you can bring it up this way. You can also just click in the menu and type in SC for screenshot. I'm gonna actually right click and send mine to the desktop just to have a quick reminder here. And you can take a picture of the entire screen. That includes the background and the panel bar, or you can just do the active window. This is the active window. And then hit OK, and then hit save and send it to where? I'm going to send mine to the desktop. It names the screenshot today's date, time, and my time is not accurate, by the way, and hit save. It's a small file. Right click, properties. Fairly small file compared to if I were to use the actual full screen, entire screen, which takes you can have it take also, I wanted to do this one more time. You can also have it capture your mouse pointer if you want to. But I'm going to take a picture of the whole screen and send it to the same place, my desktop, and let you compare the two files. So my screenshot is now, this is a screenshot of my desktop. It's a very simple tool. However, this takes more space if you have precious hard drive. So that's 679 kilobytes, or KIBs. 665 bytes total. That's a little bigger than this guy here. Just wanted to point that out. This is a lot smaller. Okay, a little tip for you, multi-select, drag a box, and then hit delete. I can even do that to that program, because it's just a shortcut. So anytime you're messing around with your icons, I recommend doing that. Your style and icons, separate screenshot. If you are into wanting to increase the font size, maybe you have issues with visually impaired, You could use this DPI setting. You can see everything is growing. I'm going to leave this alone for a second. You can also click that and increase the font size. So if I wanted 12, for instance, I didn't like 10, I just hit select and everything gets bigger. That make sense? Okay. Screenshot just before you change things. Good idea. Good idea. All right, now that you see my icons a lot larger, a couple of ways to resize. I can do this, or I could right click on the imaginary bar and resize this box rather easily. All right, so that was appearance. So again, I'm going to go back to font and I'm going to reduce this back down to, well, default. And hit select. And then back this back out. All right, so you can see the icons resize themselves. Now your desktop settings, I'm not really going to cover in this video. But this desktop is all of the wallpaper that is available for the Linux Mint Xfce distribution. You can also add your own photos of your children, your pets, your friends. You can do that from a folder even. So anyways, the icons, if you are wanting to have them on your desktop, I normally don't, and I'll point that to the file manager in a second. So let's say you clicked on these guys. These are system icons. They're not deletable. Okay, in other words, if you decided you wanted to get rid of that, I'm going to right click and let you see the delete command is not here. You need to remove them here. But more importantly, I don't need these icons. I'll tell you why. If you open up your file manager, you have your home folder here. You have your trash can here. You have even your computer here. It shows my additional hard drives and USB sticks. But more importantly, what I'm getting at is your file manager has all of the pertinent information that is here. Even the removable drives is in here. There's some other stuff. Let's move on. That's desktop. Notifications, self-explanatory. Panel. If you needed to resize this panel a little bit, you can do that through here. I made it a lot bigger. Once you're in this screen, this lights up red. So I'm going to reduce that down a little bit. You can see all the icons are changing. This is my panel. I left this in large format. Again, a lot of seniors may like that, or other users. You can also shrink this. Just keep in mind, if you do, you don't have as much room for icons anymore. That's why I like a lot of real estate. You can also change the number of rows. You're allowed 6. That's a little excessive. Big old icon here. All right, so appearance, items, you can be very careful experimenting. Do screenshots if you're going to experiment. All right, let's move on. Where did I leave off? That was panel. Window manager. If you don't like the close button, the minimize, maximize over here, and you want them on the left, grab a hold of this thing with your mouse, click and drag, and move it over there. Now my close button is over here. If I wanted to move the extra keys with it, I can do that. Now they're all over here. This works the same way as the ones that I had earlier. So I'm going to click and drag and put that back. You need to have it where a line appears and drop it. And then I'll drag the other box and drop it. So yeah, there's some custom things you can do in here. So I'm really not going to discuss all of the settings today because I need to get going on this video, so I'm not spend so much time on individual objects. But your display is here, so no, my monitor is not 72 inch. All my Linux distros report this monitor as a 72. It's actually 43 inches. Yeah, it is quite big. And this is where you can change your resolution if you have that option. Be careful with the scaling. Sometimes people want to scale things and sometimes stuff gets blown off the screen. Your refresh rates of your monitor is here. Be also careful when you're changing resolutions. When you change the resolution and hit apply, it blanks the screen out. If the screen stays blank for more than 5 seconds, leave it alone. Do not reboot your computer. It will time out usually within 10 to 15 seconds. and then revert back to the previous resolution. So you don't have to panic, is what I'm getting at. That one is important. All right, my mouse and touchpad, you have your acceleration control, sensitivity, and also your behavior, and I'm going to talk about the themes, for instance. This mouse pointer is not installed under normal condition, and neither is this one. What you get is these here, minus the radioactive and Xenis as mouse pointers. If you want these kind of mouse pointers, if you want the full details, currently I have a video on my YouTube site that discusses that for the Cinnamon desktop for Linux Mint. It gives you full details on that. But these I can put in less than 30 seconds, providing I have the file. So I'm going to leave this as my mouse pointer from now on. Okay. You got your power manager. If you have a power key on your keyboard, you may want to switch that to ask. And what that does is when you depress it, it'll do something like this. It'll ask you to shut down, restart, log out, and all these other functions. Your choice. I'm going to leave that back to default. And continue. So power manager, audio control, I think you can figure out, and a removable drive, the same thing. There's some features in the accessibility for mouse and keyboard improvement, that kind of stuff. Default apps is exactly what it says. Driver manager, I'll just click open for a second. So in general, Linux installs with the open source Nouveau driver in most cases, the open source driver. And for the most part, they work great. If you have like an NVIDIA card, for instance, and you want to install the proprietary driver, certainly you can do that. And if you install the proprietary driver, it will install another program called NVIDIA Server Settings, which are customized settings for your NVIDIA graphics card. I currently have no proprietary drivers in use, and I don't really need it for this distribution because that Nouveau driver does everything I need. Your firewall does come deactivated. So this is GuffW, that's what I call it, GuffW. It's a simple firewall. Caution you, if you decide to activate it, it will deny all incoming whatever. If you're trying to do file sharing, you need to write rules for it. Not going to cover that in this video. It comes deactivated, by the way, normally. And Linux is a fairly good secure system, by the way. Keep in mind, you don't want to have no login passwords or guest passwords that are open. You want to tie your network down a little bit and put passwords on your user or even guest users if you use guest users. You can also deactivate that from the login window under users. Allow auto logins? No. Do yourself a favor. Think about it this way. You've heard plenty of bad stories out there. Don't be one of those. Don't allow auto logins. You want a username and password. And if you're going to allow guest sessions, put a password on them. Okay. All right, session startup, really not going to cover. Software manager is just another click where you can open up your software manager, and then software sources again are coming from Mint and Ubuntu. And one more thing that's undocumented in here, your Flatpak software. Let me open this up manually. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to double click. That worked rather quickly on this USB stick. All this software comes from flathub.org. That's Flatpak software. And that source is not listed in here as an FYI. So there's a lot of things in here. And your software managers, your terminal box, or your Synaptic package managers, you can install a lot of things. Now, if you're curious about where this mouse pointer is, I'm just going to point to the fact that this file manager here operates just like most, if not all, Xfce Thunars. But you can use Control-H to view hidden files, or you can just click. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds, but anything with a dot in front of it is a hidden folder, if it's a folder or a file. Bash stands for Born Again Shell, and those are the commands that I had punched in earlier, if you recall, having fun with those birthdays and trivia, and the install commands. This is the file that remembers the history. It is actually editable. That's .bash history. The folder I'm referring to that has this mouse pointer is .icons. You will have to make your own folder. Right-click, create folder, start it with a period, like a dot, I'm going to use the word test 1. This is not hard to do, folks. Okay, that has currently nothing in it. So I'm just showing you how to make a hidden folder. Now I'm going to hit Control H and you'll see test 1 will disappear because it is a hidden folder. Control H. So really, for most users, you are in here for a reason, right? When you're doing this. So I'm going to hit delete because I don't need that folder. There is the 2 mouse pointer themes. They're in folders. Watch my other video on how to do this for Linux Mint Cinnamon Desktop. You'll get a real good idea how to do this. But more importantly, I'm going to go to my settings for a second and show you how easy it is to do maintenance on these things if you're experimenting with different mouse pointers. So I'm going to remove radioactive. I'm going to leave Azenis alone because that's this one. But I need to back out of this thing so you can see the change. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to empty my trash on purpose and go back one and delete this radioactive folder. That's the mouse pointer folder. So when you're doing your mouse pointers, they're all done in folders. And I explained that procedure pretty well in the Linux Mint 21 Cinnamon Desktop for mouse pointers. But more importantly, they're gone. It's not here anymore. No more radioactive. Remember? It was yellow. If I change my mind, I can go back to my trash can, right-click, and restore that theme. And I need to back out of the screen to see it in here. So back it out and back in there. And now my radioactive is back. You can add a lot of different mouse themes. Linux Mint gives you quite a few of them, but they're all black and white ones. Thought I'd throw some color in this mix. I'll leave that one for right now. So I am getting kind of lengthy on this video, so let me sum up. Basically, you have a lot of software, and also what you can do is right-click on your screen. I'm not going to get into creating launchers, and then you can create URL links, but you can also use web apps for the same process. You can create folders on your desktop. You can create empty documents. This is done with a text editor. So I use text editors to create simple text files and also script files. Because if you recall Timeshift, I also use the rsync for other purposes. So you can also open up Terminal here by right-clicking on the screen. And also keep in mind, you're not stuck with the wallpaper. You can right-click in here also to change your desktop. You can also assign your own if you go to a folder, that kind of stuff. You can also open up your file manager in root mode. That's more for advanced features, and create links. There's a bunch of options for you. If you do have icons on your desktop, you can also arrange them differently. There's lots of options with this operating system. You don't have to use all of the options. You certainly don't have to use Terminal if you don't want to use it. You don't have to use Synaptic Package Manager if you don't want to use it. But, Linux Mint gives you lots of options. You want to do the point and click thing? Here's an example of GIMP. GIMP was what again? It's like Photoshop. I'm using that yellow mouse pointer, and it does have a couple of little tricks up its sleeve. Go watch my video on mouse pointers for Linux Mint 21 Cinnamon Desktop if you want full details on that. Thank you for watching, folks, and take care.